Britain is not a land of jungles or vast deserts. It is not known for its great wildernesses or unexplored frontiers, and yet, when darkness falls on its hills and coasts, when fog drifts over its church towers, and the wind moves across its forests, strange shapes have been seen, shapes that do not belong to any known creature. Witnesses speak of wings broader than a man is tall, of bodies gliding silently without the characteristic motions of birds, of shapes shifting in the tree line, of ape-men and lake serpents, and many things in between. Some describe faces, not animal but human, or perhaps something that only resembles humanity in the most unsettling ways. In April of 1976, two sisters, June and Vicky Melling, encountered what they described as a man-sized owl-like creature perched near Mornan Old Church. Its eyes glowed red, its wings broad, its proportions troublingly humanoid. Their father was so alarmed by their distress that he ended their holiday prematurely. Independent sightings followed that same summer. Two teenage girls camping near the church described a huge bird, but shaped like a man. In 1978, another girl saw a creature rise vertically from the trees, as if weightless. And a decade later, in 1989, a visiting American described a bird man with a wide mouth, pointed ears, and glowing eyes, who rose silently into the air. Cornwall has owls, including very large ones, but none match the described shape, size, or behaviour of this owl man. In the summer of 1776, at a moment when human attention was fixed firmly upon the affairs of revolution and empire, an altogether different disturbance briefly unsettled a quiet parish west of London. In the opening days of August, several witnesses reported the appearance of a creature unlike any then recognised. It was described as serpentine in form, comparable in length to the largest common snake known in Britain, its body patterned with a grey, mottled skin that caught the light only fleetingly as it moved. The head of this animal was said to be disproportionately large, roughly the size of a small woman's hand, and positioned at the front of a body that measured little more than 2 feet in total length. Most curious were two short wings, set unusually far forward near the head, suggesting neither the anatomy of bird nor bat, but something altogether more ambiguous. The creature did not fly with speed or grace. Witnesses remarked that it appeared almost too heavy to sustain itself, its movement slow and laboured. Rather than travelling horizontally, it flew with its head noticeably higher than its tail, as though constantly attempting and failing to climb. It never rose more than 7 or 8 feet above the ground, giving the impression of perpetual effort without ascent. In 1996, beneath a full moon in England's Lake District, a small group of campers encountered something that has never been satisfactorily explained. Neil Mitchelson was camping with friends in the uplands between Little Langdale and Coniston. A large fire burned at their site, illuminating the surrounding hills, while clouds drifted slowly across the night sky. It was then that Mitchelson noticed a shape moving beneath the cloud cover, travelling steadily from left to right. As it approached, he alerted his companions. All 10 campers watched as a vast, manta-ray-shaped form passed overhead, its wingspan estimated at approximately 35 feet. Unlike a gliding silhouette or optical illusion, the object appeared animate. The witnesses later stated they could clearly see its wings flapping as it crossed the sky. The sighting lasted only moments, yet left a profound impression. In the rolling landscape of the Malvern Hills, a place long associated with folklore and uneasy encounters, 2 couples reported an experience that would leave them visibly shaken. While hill-walking in Herefordshire, the group noticed an unusual figure at a distance, an odd, upright form that they later struggled to categorize. One of the men decided to approach, hoping to determine whether it was a person or an animal, and what he saw, at close range, caused him to retreat immediately. He later described the figure as a large, hunched creature with the appearance of a vulture or an eagle-like man. As he withdrew, the creature appeared to follow the group, its presence provoking mounting fear. The situation escalated when one of the women collapsed, overcome by terror. She remained unconscious as the others carried her to a nearby public house. The police were contacted, but the report was not pursued with any seriousness. No explanation was offered, and no further investigation followed. In September of 2017, a report emerged from the county of Shropshire that would quickly attract the attention of those studying reports of anomalous flying creatures. Jonathan Whitcomb, a long-time advocate for the survival of pterosaur-like animals, was contacted by a woman who claimed to have witnessed an extraordinary event near Whitchurch. Her attention was first drawn not by sight, but by sound, a piercing screech unlike anything she has heard before. At first the noise seemed distant, but it grew steadily louder, moving toward her from across the surrounding fields and through the line of trees nearby. When she finally saw the source, she was confronted by two large, airborne creatures flying side by side. She later described them as resembling pterodactyls, far larger than the biggest heron she had ever seen, with elongated beaks and broad, leathery wings. Both were grey in colour. The creatures passed over the trees and continued at speed until they disappeared into a clearing between houses and woodland, leaving the witness absolutely stunned by what she believed she had seen. Several days later, the account took on an additional dimension. The woman's 13-year-old son ran in from the garden, reporting that he too had seen a large bird with bat-like wings, accompanied by a strange screeching sound. When shown an illustration of a pterosaur, he identified it immediately as matching the creature he had observed. On a November evening of 1963, 4 teenage friends were walking home from a party through the Kent countryside when their attention was drawn to an unexpected light in the sky. The light, described as flickering rather than steady, descended into a field near Sandling Park before disappearing into the trees at the park's edge. Moments later, the group heard movement in the undergrowth, and what emerged from the brush was not a person, nor any animal familiar to them, but a figure that advanced toward them in an unsettling, waddling gait. The witnesses later described the creature as a bipedal, bat-like form, entirely black in colour and standing at approximately 5 feet tall. Most disturbing was its apparent lack of a head, a detail on which the witnesses were emphatic. They also reported large webbed feet and wings folded against its back, giving the impression of a creature adapted neither fully to land nor air. Just as Britain has produced repeated accounts of oversized, anomalous flying creatures, it has also generated a parallel tradition of encounters with beings that are resolutely terrestrial, upright, powerful, unsettlingly close to ourselves, and in a variety of shapes and sizes. In August of 2012, a report emerged from the Abernethy Forest in Strathspey, deep within the Scottish Highlands, an area of ancient woodland, sparse human habitation, and long-established wildlife corridors. The principal witness was a man with extensive professional experience working with primates. Having trained as a zookeeper, he had worked at several zoological collections across the United Kingdom, including Dudley Zoo, and described himself as deeply familiar with the anatomy, behaviour, and movement of great apes. Each year, he and his elder brother undertook a shared holiday involving fishing, hunting, and wild camping in Scotland. That summer, his brother selected Abernethy Forest as their destination. On the morning of the encounter, the two men rose shortly after 4 o'clock as first light began to break through the forest canopy. Armed only with small-caliber rifles, they moved quietly from their camp toward a clearing at the forest edge, an area where rabbits were known to feed and where large blackberry bushes had been noted the previous evening. After only a few steps, the witness realised he could no longer hear his brother behind him. Turning back, he saw an expression of shock and fear on his brother's face, an expression he later stated he had never seen before. His brother was staring past him, eyes wide, fixed on something beyond the tree line. Looking in the same direction, the witness saw a dark, crouched figure, approximately 50 feet away, positioned beside the blackberry bush. At first, the figure appeared to be feeding, its shoulders moving rhythmically as it gathered berries. Even while crouched, it appeared to stand at about the same height as the witness himself, about 5'2". The creature then raised its head slightly, turning partway toward them, tilting its head in a manner that the witness interpreted as attentive or curious. In a single movement, it stood upright and turned to fully face them. At full height, the figure was estimated to be between 7 and 8 feet tall. It was covered in long, jet-black hair across most of its body, with sparser hair on the upper chest and face. The skin beneath was described as very dark, except for the lower lip, which appeared distinctly pink. The creature had a wide nose, large eyes, and facial features that the witness compared to an older bonobo chimpanzee, though with a noticeably flatter face, particularly around the mouth. The scalp appeared partially bald. Its shoulders were exceptionally broad, estimated at about 4 feet across, with longer hair visible on the forearms and chin. The arms and thighs were described as massively built compared to those of a gorilla, and the overall body plan strongly suggested an upright great ape rather than a human figure. The encounter was completely silent. The creature did not advance or display aggression. Overcome by fear, the witness slowly lowered his rifle, dropped to one knee, and placed the weapon on the ground. After several seconds, the creature turned away and walked calmly back into the trees, pausing only once to look back, as if to check whether it was being followed. In the summer of 2012, on the North Downs in Surrey, a solitary runner experienced an encounter that would fundamentally alter his understanding of the landscape he thought he knew. The witness had been training on the stone steps leading up to Box Hill, close to the stepping stones below. It was late evening, the air was cooling, and daylight was still present. During his run, he became aware of a series of loud, distant knocking sounds. At the time, however, his focus remained on training, and he gave the sound very little thought. After completing his session, he sat on the steps to drink a recovery beverage and rest. Approximately 25 minutes passed before he became aware of footsteps descending the hill behind him. Expecting a dog walker, he didn't initially turn, and then abruptly the footsteps stopped. The witness reported hearing heavy breathing and experiencing a profound sensation of being watched. Turning over his right shoulder, he saw a figure standing roughly 10 metres behind him, positioned slightly to the side and above the steps. What stood there, he later stated, was not a human being. He described the figure as ape-like in appearance, with brown fur mottled by patches of grey. The face was unsettlingly human, though dominated by a flat nose and a disproportionately large jaw. The head was domed at the top. The creature stood upright on 2 legs, though its posture slumped forward slightly, and its arms were notably long in proportion to its body. It was exceptionally thick and muscular, solid and powerful, and immediately intimidating. The witness estimated its height to be about 6 feet, though he acknowledged uncertainty due to the angle and to the shock of the moment. For about 30 seconds the creature stood and stared at him, and then it turned away and walked off, repeatedly glancing back as it retreated. In a wooded area of Smitham Hill near Bristol, a dog walker reported an encounter that unfolded with unsettling speed and proximity. The incident began with the sound of a snapping twig, an ordinary noise in woodland, until the witness's dogs became visibly agitated and bolted away. Almost immediately, she became aware of a strong, unpleasant odour in the air. Taking a shortcut through the trees in an attempt to reach home, she noticed the sound of soft, deliberate breathing behind her. Alarmed, she began to run, but stumbled and fell, turning to face what she believed was pursuing her. She found herself confronted by a large, ape-like figure. The witness described the creature as standing approximately 7 feet tall, with dark brown hair covering its body. It appeared upright and powerfully built, yet it did not advance. For around 20 seconds it remained roughly 10 feet away, staring at her as she lay on the ground. During this time it occasionally tilted its head, as if attempting to understand what it was observing. The creature then moved off quietly into the forest. On a spring morning of April 2017, an elderly couple set out for their customary walk in Baggeridge Country Park on the outskirts of the Black Country. It was around 9:30 and the park was quiet. They chose a rarely used route known locally as the Horseshoe Path. Their small dog didn't tolerate other animals well, and this particular trail was seldom occupied. Not far into the walk, the man became aware of a dark figure among the trees, about 30 feet away. At first glance it appeared merely unusual, until he noticed that it seemed to be watching them. Each time he looked directly at it, the figure would retreat behind a tree, only to reappear moments later from a slightly different position. Concerned, but unwilling to alarm his wife, the man said nothing. They continued walking. The figure maintained pace with them, remaining parallel and concealed, its movements deliberate and cautious. After about 10 minutes, his wife noticed his growing anxiety and asked what was wrong, and he pointed out the figure. She too saw it, ducking back and then peering out from behind trees, as if observing them with intent. At that moment their dog began to bark and growl. The couple hurried on, now keeping the dog firmly on the lead, and eventually reached a fork in the path that led back towards the car park. As they emerged from the woodland into the open ground, they paused to catch their breath, and they looked back. The figure had stepped fully into the open. It did not follow them further. Both witnesses agreed on its basic form. It stood upright, was very dark in colour, and appeared to be covered in hair. The woman thought it was about 8 feet tall. Her husband estimated closer to 7. Some encounters don't take place in forests or remote hillsides, but within the most familiar of human environments, the home. When this witness was about 17 years old, they were living with their parents in Haslingden, Lancashire. One evening in October, at approximately 7:45, they were alone in the house. Their parents were out, and they were sitting on the telephone cabinet, engaged in a casual conversation with a friend. As they spoke, their attention drifted toward the kitchen doorway. There, partially framed by the door, stood a figure. At first the witness assumed it was a person, yet almost immediately recognized that it could not be. The figure's head came within an inch or two of the top of the door frame. It leaned into the doorway, exposing its head and upper body in a manner that the witness later described as inquisitive rather than aggressive, as though checking to see who was on the phone. The figure was tall and broad and covered in hair. In attempting to describe it, the witness reached for the closest cultural reference available, likening it to the character Chewbacca, not as a literal comparison, but as a shorthand for size and appearance. The hair was described as mousy blonde. No glowing eyes, no overtly threatening features were recalled. What remained most striking was its sheer presence, where no such presence should have been. When their father came home, he immediately went to check the kitchen, and nothing was there. No sign of entry, no disturbance. The witness told no one in the family, and never saw the figure again. Across lakes and coves and reservoirs and lochs and flooded quarries, witnesses have reported shapes that move beneath the surface, long dark forms that break the water briefly before sinking back into the depths. On a July afternoon in 2010, at about 3:30, an unusual sighting was reported off the coast of Paynton in South Devon. Witnesses at Saltern Cove observed a large plesiosaur-like creature hunting a school of mackerel about 30 yards offshore. The fish reacted with visible panic, fleeing into the shallows and beaching themselves in apparent desperation. One of the witnesses, Jill Pierce, photographed the animal. She later described it as being around 3 meters in length, with a rounded greenish-brown hump breaking the surface of the water. The creature appeared to possess large flippers and a small reptile-like head set atop a long neck measuring approximately 2.5 feet. In overall size and bulk, she compared it to a sea lion, though its form didn't match any known marine mammal native to British waters. A second eyewitness, Graham Oxley, aged 63 and also from Paynton, was walking his dog along the beach at the same time. His initial impression was that he was observing a turtle. What caught his attention was a smooth black dome rising repeatedly from the water, more rounded than a turtle's shell, doing so at regular intervals. The object appeared to linger near submerged seaweed in a water approximately 4 feet deep. For about half an hour it remained largely stationary, surfacing intermittently. Only gradually did Oxley realise that what he had taken to be a shell was in fact the creature's back. More curious still is what followed. Oxley reported that the creature appeared to alter its colour. While resting in the shadow of the seaweed, it appeared black. As it moved away into open water, its colouring shifted to greenish-brown, closely matching the surrounding sea. Oxley hurried home to retrieve his camera, but when he returned, the animal was already swimming away. Britain's largest natural lake has long attracted visitors for its beauty and tranquillity, yet beneath the surface of Windermere, a quieter and more enigmatic story has been unfolding, one shaped not by legend alone, but by repeated modern testimony. The creature that would come to be known as Beau Nessie first entered public awareness in 2006. That year, journalism lecturer Steve Burnap reported observing an unusual disturbance on the lake's surface. He described seeing a straight line of broken water, punctuated by 3 distinct humps, moving steadily up the lake. The formation was estimated to be about 20 feet in length. The water was calm, there was no wind, and the wake did not resemble that produced by motorboats, something with which he was already familiar. In 2007, photographer Lyndon Adams captured an image from Gummer's How overlooking the lake. The object he photographed was estimated at approximately 15 feet in length. In 2009, a swimmer, Mr. Noblet, was struck by a sudden 3-foot wave while in the water, a very unusual event given the conditions. 2 years later, in 2011, kayaker Tom Pickles photographed what he described as a large humped object moving rapidly through the lake. He likened it to a giant dark brown snake with 3 pronounced humps, its skin appearing seal-like in texture, but its overall form completely abnormal. The creature's movement was fast and undulating. Pickles was not alone. His colleague Sarah Harrington also witnessed the object and independently described it as resembling an enormous snake. Teggy is the name given to a long-reported lake creature said to inhabit Llyn Tegid, Bala Lake in Gwynedd, North Wales. Descriptions vary, but witnesses have spoken of a large, dark, serpentine or humped form moving beneath the surface. Reports date back decades and are often framed as Wales's answer to the Loch Ness Monster, though no physical evidence has been produced. And in Sandwell Valley Country Park in the West Midlands, rumours circulate of an alligator or crocodile-like creature living in the area's pools and waterways, often linked to the post-war fascination for exotic pets and their subsequent release. Whilst no confirmed capture was really made, this story persists within Britain's well-recorded history of non-native animal sightings. Human perception is notoriously unreliable when judging size, distance and speed, particularly in unfamiliar conditions. Large birds seen at close range can appear enormous. Birds seen at a distance can seem closer than they are. A heron lifting from water, an owl gliding silently, a seal surfacing briefly, each can produce impressions that grow more dramatic in recollection. In wooded environments, partial views exaggerate form. A crouched deer may appear upright, a bear-shaped shadow may seem to rise, reflections on water distort length and motion. Lake surfaces in particular are very deceptive. Waves align and intersect. Floating debris can briefly assume organic form. In calm conditions, even minor disturbances appear significant. These are not trivial points. They explain many sightings and must always be considered. Expectation also plays a role. Once an area acquires a reputation, whether for flying creatures, ape-like figures or lake monsters, witnesses may unconsciously frame what they see within that context. This does not imply invention, it implies interpretation. Human beings are pattern seekers by nature. We look for meaning first, explanation second. And Britain, with its long memory of folklore and legends and earlier reports, provides a ready-made vocabulary for the unfamiliar. Fear also alters perception. Sudden encounters trigger adrenaline, narrowing your focus and fragmenting your memory. Time elongates, details sharpen or blur unpredictably. Low light, fatigue, solitude, and heightened emotional states further complicate recall. In rare cases, neurological or psychological episodes may produce vivid, convincing experiences without external cause. Again, these explanations are all real, and they do matter. And yet, these explanations begin to strain when applied universally. They struggle, for example, when multiple witnesses observe the same event independently. They falter when sightings recur across decades in the same locations. They become uncomfortable when witnesses include zoologists and photographers and engineers and the clergy, trained observers, people familiar with animals, environments, and deception. They are least convincing when the behaviour described is purposeful rather than random. That is to say, creatures that appear to watch rather than flee, forms that move intelligently through water, figures that track human movement and then withdraw, animals that appear to adapt to concealment. These are not the usual hallmarks of misperception. There is, of course, the question of evidence. Why are there no bodies, no bones, no clear definitive footage? This absence is often cited as decisive. But absence is not in itself an explanation. Britain is densely populated, but much of its terrain, woodland, water, moor and upland, remains poorly monitored. Bodies decay. Scavengers erase traces. Lakes, particularly, conceal. Forests absorb. And if some phenomena are transient rather than permanent, rare, mobile or behaviourally cautious, the expectation of physical proof really is unrealistic. What matters is not whether every creature described here exists in a biological sense, but what matters is that people, ordinary, articulate, often reluctant witnesses, continue to report encounters that fall outside of expectation. Britain is not a wilderness in the conventional sense. Its landscapes are old, well-trodden, and deeply known, and yet it is precisely in such places that these encounters occur. Perhaps these accounts represent rare animals, misidentified and fleeting. Perhaps they reflect the mind's response to ambiguity, or perhaps they point to phenomena that do not fit comfortably within our current categories at all. And so the most honest position is neither belief nor disbelief, but curiosity, tempered by caution. And the British landscape, for all its familiarity, has clearly not yet surrendered all of its secrets.